Good evening and welcome to our webinar VanillaCloud Jumpstart. My name is Karsten Samaschke. I'm founder and CEO of Cloudical. We are the makers of Vanilla Stack, and today I want to speak about VanillaCloud. We have quite an interesting agenda here. We will speak about challenges in IT. We will speak about several aspects when moving on to hyperscaler environments. We will speak about, and cloud environments, we will speak about Vanilla Stack and VanillaCloud. And yeah, I'm going to give you an insight into what VanillaCloud is about, what the meaning and the ideas behind VanillaCloud are, and will give you all the required necessary information for your jumpstart into VanillaCloud. Before we start, speaking about VanillaCloud, let's start by speaking more in general about the current challenges we have in IT, because those challenges are what brings us towards Vanilla Stack and VanillaCloud. I'll touch on both things throughout my presentation. So first of all, the current challenges that we are day in, day out confronted with. Those challenges are basically our customers and stakeholders always expecting more. They expect greater flexibility in infrastructure and infrastructure usage. They do not want to wait for additional infrastructure to be provisioned. They do not want to wait for infrastructures to be present after months. They want to have that immediately, and if they want to scale down, they expect that to happen immediately as well. Generally, they expect faster deployments. So bringing things onto market should be basically like a breeze. It should be handled day in, day out without any efforts. They expect faster reactions and better scalability from operational teams. So whenever something happens, an operational team is supposed to be there to react basically instantaneously. So the idea and the expectation there is to provide the stakeholders and customers with way more agile operations. One of the most important aspects that we are confronted with day in and day out is scalability and availability. Availability is supposed to be around 24/7, supposed to be around 100%. Truth is, that is hard to achieve, specifically when running things in traditional kind of environments. I mean, it's quite simple to achieve like 90–95% of availability, but 100%, it's quite challenging to achieve. Also, things like automation are expected. So things should happen in a repeatable way. Things should happen in a way that we can basically use Git as the source of truth for whatever we roll out. So scripts and automated approaches have to be in place. And customers and stakeholders demand governance. They want to know what is running. They want to be able to control every aspect of a platform from top to bottom and everything in between. Well, that sounds like a lot of challenges, a lot of expectations we have to fulfill. That's true, but the real challenge is this one. All of those things should happen at lower costs. And to be honest, that is the true challenge in all of that, because we can achieve all of that with more manpower or more machines, but then it would increase the costs. So how do we handle that? Well, for many organizations, the answer is clear. The answer is let's do cloud. Let's move into a cloud environment and boom, magically, all of our problems will be gone. At least that's the expectation. Well, the point is, moving into a cloud environment is quite simple because frankly, cloud environments are nothing else than, or nothing different than our traditional environments, but on a bigger scale. And instead of buying our infrastructures, we rent them. So the purpose and the promise of a cloud environment is basically we rent resources we want to have as long as we want to have them. That sounds great. And the most typical and the most often used approach in moving into a cloud environment is basically lift and shift. Lift and shift is an approach where we would basically try to replicate in a cloud environment what we have in our traditional environments. Instead of running physical machines, we would run virtual machines. We would try to reset up, and I put that in quotation marks, we try to reset up our data center in a cloud environment. And while that leverages a lot, if not many of the advantages of a cloud environment, such as greater flexibility, the ability to scale up by adding more infrastructures or scaling down by removing infrastructures as required, the problem with that approach is that we won't achieve the kind of significance in cost cuttings that we want to achieve, because we would still run our infrastructures and our applications the same way as we did previously, just on a virtualized environment. So the cost cuttings, the cost savings are arising from the fact that we are using other people's infrastructure, which is made available to us at a scale. So doing lift and shift approaches is a very viable approach, but if you truly want to cut costs, if you truly want to embrace the flexibility of a cloud environment, if you truly want to leverage all of the advantages, you need to change more things. It's not like changing it's not like just changing your environment. You need to go deeper. You need to change your approach to cloud. That changed approach is currently known, and it is some sort of a hype, I'm quite honest on that, as moving into a containerized environment. Containers are basically the next big thing. They are, the current buzzword of choice. What is a container? What is a containerized environment, and in which sense does it differ from a VM-based environment? Well, let's start with the latter aspect. Difference between a container and a virtual machine is basically the same difference as with a computer and a program. A virtual machine tries to replicate a computer. Basically, it encapsulates everything, and you have a virtual computer inside your computer with virtual storage, with virtual processors, and so on and so forth. That is a very great approach, and to be honest, it's a secure approach, which is highly recommendable if security is amongst your priorities. But it is also an approach that is consuming a lot of resources. Containers, on the other hand, are basically small units. They are completely independently packaged. So a container contains everything the application needs to run with. And we use a mechanism in Linux and emulated in Windows that is called process virtualization. So what we basically do is we do not emulate a complete computer. We instead just emulate parts of the environment, parts of the ecosystem. That makes containers pretty cheap components in regards to how much infrastructure they actually consume. And you can basically, depending on the size of your containers, but basically run a multitude of containers compared to virtual machines on the same infrastructure. It's typically around the factor of 3 to 5. So like 3 to 5 times more containers on the same infrastructure as virtual machines. But that comes with drawbacks, and that is also part of the truth there. One major drawback is security. Since containers are more like programs, well, the security is more like as with programs. So you have a basic level of security, obviously. So you have different containers working independently of each other, but since they share the same environment and there is no such thing as a virtual machine they are running in, they are basically always running on the same kind of machine. If one of the containers breaks out of that security environment, well, it can basically affect all of the other containers. That wouldn't be possible with a virtual machine. So that is one effect to keep in mind. And the other effect is just the sheer numbers. If you would be an operator, an engineer, being there for operating workloads with virtual machines, you would have to operate, say, 3, 4, 5 virtual machines for your workloads on a given infrastructure. With containers, the same person on the same infrastructure would have to operate like 15 to 20, perhaps even 25 or 30 containers. So the number of things you have to work with, the number of containers you have to act upon, you have to keep alive, increases. And that is basically, on the one hand, a very good thing because infrastructure is used way more efficiently. On the other hand, in regards to operations, it is a huge challenge. To run containers properly, you need to do again do a change. You need to again adjust on the environment, and you would need to bring in an additional kind of infrastructure that is supposed to take care of your containers, which is, and that's the next big buzzword, Kubernetes, your container orchestrator. Kubernetes is basically the component that tries to take away that kind of complexity in regards to the numbers of running infrastructures. Because with Kubernetes, you would just tell the platform to run your workloads. Kubernetes would do all the magic for you. With Kubernetes, you can basically define that specific workloads or pods or deployments, as they are called within Kubernetes, have to be there and have to be scaled by 3. So 3 instances are supposed to be running. You can bring in self-healing capabilities. Kubernetes would then look if one of the instances would fail. Kubernetes would automatically restart that instance or start a new instance for that matter until the number you want to have in place, the number of instances is reached again. That is done automatically. The same is true for load management. So if you see that there's a lot of load coming in, Kubernetes can basically take care of that and start additional instances. So it would be able to scale up and scale down based on rules. And that is very, very awesome because it takes away much of the complexity of running huge numbers of containers. And believe me, you will be running huge numbers of containers because they are so cheap to run. So Kubernetes is your container orchestrator of choice. And one of the greatest things with Kubernetes is that it is secure by design. That kind of security by design within Kubernetes is achieved by a platform that is not making things available automatically. With Kubernetes, you do not expose your applications unless you tell Kubernetes to do so. With Kubernetes, you won't have exposed ports or things that are not supposed to be there unless you expose them and make them available. So that is one of the security measurements with Kubernetes. The other and very, very important security measurement with Kubernetes is that it is 100% open source. Kubernetes has one of the biggest communities in the world. Large numbers of huge companies are working day in, day out with Kubernetes. Kubernetes is backed by Google, is backed by Microsoft, is backed by Amazon, is backed by Cloudical. So basically by the biggest names in the business. And they are day in, day out contributing to the platform, ensuring security and ensuring that you have a huge community that backs the product. Kubernetes is the de facto standard for container orchestration in 2021. So Kubernetes, basically for the rescue, Kubernetes as the kind of component that is changing the world. Well, let me put it that way. 76% of all organizations plan to go cloud native, plan to move on to cloud environments, and plan to work with Kubernetes over the next 3 years. And that is not a number I am basically bringing onto the table. That is a number that was researched by a company called 451 Research Group in 2020. So that number is a sustainable number. It is a true number, and it explains why Kubernetes-based workloads are so important, and it emphasizes the importance of Kubernetes. But, and that is a huge but, even if you understand that you do not just only need to move onto a cloud environment, but instead of move on to containerized workloads, work with Kubernetes, you will have a lot of challenges. And let me be very honest, Kubernetes is a hard thing to learn. It is a beast. With Kubernetes, you have a very, very steep learning curve. And frankly, just ask your operators, just ask your ops teams. The first approaches towards Kubernetes are typically quite devastating, because from a traditional operations perspective, Kubernetes behaves completely differently. In a traditional environment, an administrator would basically configure machines and tell every machine what it is supposed to run and how things are supposed to run, and so on and so forth. With Kubernetes, you just configure the orchestrator and leave the orchestrator alone. So the orchestrator does its magic, and you have to learn how to understand that, how to look into that, how to debug things. So that's a completely new world. Kubernetes provides you with a very steep learning curve in installation as well as operations. So plus you have a lot of additional integrational efforts with Kubernetes, because when you roll out Kubernetes, you just do that. You roll out Kubernetes, you have the platform installed. What about operations? What about storage, shared storage between several components of the platform? What about the configuration of the workloads? What about operational readiness, being able to understand what is going on? So the point is, for Kubernetes, you have to do all of those things on yourself. You have to set up your own Kubernetes environment. And then, because it's not that simple, your applications also need to be rewritten. And you need to bring in your automation alone. And you don't even have an answer to the question, what about virtual machines? Because Kubernetes is about containers. But to be honest and to be frank, even if 76% of organizations and enterprises want to switch over to the technology, they still have a lot of traditional virtual machines to be operated. That is not a part of what you can do with Kubernetes. And I already mentioned that the default installation of Kubernetes is unfortunately not production ready, because you need to bring in storage, you need to bring in additional functionalities, you need to do all the integrational aspects yourself. It is true that once you did that and once you learned that, you have a great platform, but the path towards that is quite challenging. And then is one thing, there's one thing then that I personally feel inclined to say. Most of the Kubernetes installation you have are commercially vendor-locked Kubernetes installation. And that basically means that you have an installation that is made of a specific vendor's product, like, for example, OpenShift or Rancher. those products are truly awesome and great products, but those Kubernetes distributions are supposed to run only on Red Hat or SUSE's or you name it infrastructure. They are not supposed to run everywhere. They are not open. They are locking you into a vendor's ecosystem. And it's quite simple to run into that trap. And what it means if you run into, and if you are vendor locked, is quite obvious. Once the vendor changes course, you have to either live with it or you are left alone. And that is a huge business risk. So we have a challenge with Kubernetes. What is the solution there? And let's not forget, we are talking about VanillaCloud and we still have to go there. Well, let me put it that way. There is a product that tries to solve those challenges, and that product is VanillaStack. Let me shortly introduce you to VanillaStack before we head over to VanillaCloud. VanillaStack is a product that is 100% Kubernetes. It brings in additional functionalities such as the vanilla installer to roll it out in a very easy way, plus additional tools on top, such as Rook, Cloud Foundry, OpenStack, many other workloads already being part of the solution. So it takes away from most, if not all, of the complexity you typically have with rolling out Kubernetes and making it operational ready, because it is operations ready. You can basically just set it up. VanillaStack is an enterprise open source cloud stack, and that means that it is designed to run within business environments. Kubernetes, in VanillaStack's perception, is to some extent some sort of an operating system. We do know that Kubernetes is not an operating system. Typically, it's the underlying Linux or Windows environment. But with VanillaStack, we try to abstract from that. To us, the world starts with Kubernetes, so we do not care about what's below that. What we do instead is we look into the environment and basically set up the platform and make the platform your operating system. So the platform is there, and then bring in the workloads that you want to have. You can even bring your own Linux. We have VanillaStack running on different kind of operating systems based on Linux, such as Debian, Ubuntu, the Red Hat stack, although we highly prefer Debian as the platform because it's pretty much as VanillaStack a 100% open source stack. And with VanillaStack, you have full commercial support. So basically, you have your Kubernetes, but you have the people to call if there is a problem. VanillaStack is true open source. So the whole VanillaStack ecosystem is 100% open source. The platform is made available under Apache 2 license. So you can basically take it, modify it, and use it as you like. There are no restrictions on that, although with your modified variant, you won't get any kind of commercial support, and that is very important. Since the platform is running vanilla editions of the included projects, such as Kubernetes, such as OpenStack, such as you name it, you will have access to the biggest community, to the biggest support communities in the market, because VanillaStack is running the community, the vanilla editions of the projects, basically the projects as they were intended to run, instead of those vendor-locked variants that just provide you with a subset of features, but are instead marketed with happy peoples and smiling computers in the background. So that is not the case with VanillaStack. VanillaStack is true open source end-to-end plus commercial support. Why do we do that? Because we feel like simplicity is best. We don't want to impose additional complexity. Instead, we want to take away complexity. VanillaStack is a platform that allows you to roll out components automatically. So we ship several components with VanillaStack, such as Harbor, such as Kibana, Grafana, and so on and so forth. And whatever you want to roll out, is rolled out in a way that it is simply working. You do your initial installation using our vanilla installer, and you can later on set up additional functionalities using Vanilla Manager. Pretty importantly, again, the components we roll out are integrated and can run out of the box. And since VanillaStack is a Kubernetes platform, well, you can easily roll back whatever you rolled out before, because it's just containers, small units that can be thrown away. Again, you can use and have commercial support for the whole platform. You might ask, why should I use VanillaStack instead of, say, Amazon's EKS or over Azure's AKS? Well, the answer is VanillaStack is in no means limited. EKS or AKS are great products, but they are limited versions of Kubernetes. You don't have all the functionalities. You only have a subset of functionalities. And that might not be obvious, but try to roll out different kind of storages. Try to roll out different kind of methodologies to access the infrastructure. Simply not possible. With VanillaStack, you can have that. And best is VanillaStack runs everywhere on bare metal, VMs, private cloud environments, public cloud environments, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, you name it. But if that is so great, if that is the thing that basically blows away everything, why isn't this presentation called Jumpstart VanillaStack? Why did we call it VanillaCloud Jumpstart? And why is something like VanillaCloud in the market? Well, the answer and the truth is that you are still left alone. If you want to roll out VanillaStack, well, you still need to set up your environment. You still need to make sure that all the dependencies are met. You still need to do your operations on your platform. You still need to roll out your security updates. You still need to maintain your platform. That is the point where VanillaCloud comes into the game. So what is VanillaCloud then, you ask? Glad you asked. Well, VanillaCloud is, as the name implies, a public cloud offering. So it basically means that you just have one point of contact and all of your infrastructure, all of your deployments is managed for you through that one point of contact. VanillaCloud is a cloud offering based on Kubernetes and VanillaStack, and it is a fully managed service. And that means you don't have to look into your operations team to run it. We do that for you. You don't have to work with your operations team to roll out updates. We do that for you. You don't have to maintain the underlying machines. We do that for you. It's a completely fully managed service, and it is, again, 100% open source, because VanillaCloud is VanillaStack. So everything that I said about VanillaStack is true with VanillaCloud as well. We roll out the vanilla tools and components, and that word vanilla does not only reference the VanillaStack tools and components, but instead it means vanilla on a broader sense. It means the tools that are created and maintained by the biggest communities in the world, by the true open source communities. Your advantage with VanillaCloud is basically you just have to sign up for it, define your cluster, and then it is rolled out for you and you can just use it. Plus, as a public cloud offering, it has a predictable pricing. I'll touch on that in a few minutes. And it is available in 2 performance tiers. So what is then part of VanillaCloud? I mean, I spoke about VanillaStack, and obviously that was a Kubernetes distribution. But is that all? No, it's not. With VanillaCloud, you get VanillaStack, your Kubernetes. You also get your own container registry. I don't know if you heard the news like 3, 4, 5 months ago, Docker Inc. decided to shrink down and cripple down a bit of Docker Hub's functionality. So when your workloads are how do I put that? If your containers are getting attention, you ultimately have to pay to avoid slowdowns. Harbor is your own private Docker Hub. So you can basically make your containers available to the broader public or to just your private kind of team. That is basically your then your internal container registry. You also have things like Cloud Foundry or GitLab included in the platform. So if you just want to roll out your workloads by checking them in and then let things trickle down towards production automatically, we get you covered. You also have KubeVirt as part of the platform. KubeVirt is a technology that allows you to run virtual machines on top of Kubernetes. So you would basically have the combination of both things, of your containerized workloads and your virtual machines. But to be honest, KubeVirt does only make sense if you have it on real machines instead of virtual machines, because nested virtualization is possible, but quite ugly in regards of performance, and we cannot strip away from that using KubeVirt. You have Rook in your platform, and Rook allows you to always have your internal storage, your persistent storage with you. There's no need for configuring those things additionally. Your cluster, your Kubernetes cluster, is always your storage backend as well. So as long as your cluster is running, your data is there. You can obviously bring in additional storage backends, external storage backends, but with Rook, you just roll out your cluster and have storage already included there. We ship Prometheus and Grafana with VanillaCloud. So you basically start your operations of your individual workloads. You don't have to install additional things, but if you want to install additional workloads, you can do that using Helm, because Helm is also part of what we roll out there. So you have your package manager for your Kubernetes dependencies in place. So when you want to roll out a sophisticated application consisting of several containers, perhaps a database, stuff like that, you would just use the Helm chart that is typically provided with that, and then it's a one-click deployment for you, and all of the magic is done on the container. Helm is always part of VanillaCloud. And you have your VanillaStack tools, such as your VanillaStack Manager. Let's look a bit more into what is there. So again, we have a Kubernetes platform. We have Docker images that can run there. Creo is our container runtime. We have Rook and Ceph for your storage needs, KubeVirt for infrastructure automation, Cloud Foundry and GitLab for your CI/CD needs, and Harbor as your private Docker registry. We have Prometheus, Grafana, Elk and F-stacks plus Jaeger for tracing. So everything a development team, for example, wants to have is already there. And we have some security aspects in there, such as Aqua, Falco, Claire. So what we do there is we integrate those tools already. They are just there. And if you then just want to ensure that, for example, your self-hosted container images are secure, that is automatically there, because those tools are then integrated with, for example, Harbor automatically. So there's no need for you to set that up on your own. It is just there. And you have your Vanilla Manager allowing you to roll out additional workloads instead of having to do those things on your own. So, sounds great? Gets even greater. As I already mentioned, we offer you two performance tiers at the moment: standard tier and performance tier. A standard tier is based off virtual machines. The performance tier is instead based off physical machines, true hardware. So with the standard tier, you get 5 VM sizes, S, M, L, XL, and there's one more, I guess, XXL. You can have up to 32 gigabytes of RAM per virtual machine. You can have up to 16 virtual CPUs per virtual machine. You can have up to 1 terabyte additional storage per virtual machine. You always have your external load balancer included, and you can bring your own domain. It might be a bit confusing. Why am I talking about virtual machines here if we are talking about VanillaCloud and VanillaStack, which is all around and all about containers? You know, the container stack, Kubernetes, needs to run somewhere. And you would do that with the standard performance tier based on virtual machines. If you want to have more power, if you want to, push things to the limit, head no further than to our performance tier. You again have 5 machine sizes. Each machine can have up to 256 gigabyte of RAM. Each machine can have up to 12 core or 24 threads per machine. Each machine can have up to 3.84 terabytes of additional storage. You always have your external load balancer inclusive and included, and you can always bring your own domain. So with VanillaCloud, you don't have to buy your infrastructure anymore. You can just rent it as long as you want it. And before I touch a bit on our hosting strategy and on the pricing strategy, that is also one very major aspect of VanillaCloud. It is a platform that you just pay for as long as you use it. It's a typical cloud model. It's no such thing as upfront payments for a year or something like that. No subscription costs. Everything is included. And if you happen to decide that you don't want to run your cluster anymore after 10 days, you only pay for 10 days. So one thing that sets VanillaCloud apart from other platforms is our hosting strategy. Because to be honest, we, Cloudical, we don't own any data center. We don't want to, because what we have with VanillaCloud is a virtual cloud. What we want to achieve is an environment and is an ecosystem that is local and that is diverse, pretty much the same as we want to do with people. We want to have the same with our hosting strategy. So VanillaCloud runs on several data centers, and when you sign up, you can, when you are onboarded, decide in which data center your VanillaCloud cluster is supposed to run. Each and every one of those data centers is explained to you. They have pros, they have cons, they might even have different prices, although I touch on that in a few seconds. But that is done intentionally because we feel like every data center, every hosting partner is responsible for its own ecosystem, and they have different strengths. There are some that might not be the cheapest one, but have the best customer support in the world, or have that fancy additional kind of infrastructure you always looked for. And others, are more conservative, perhaps cheaper, but then again, as I said, a bit more conservative. So we want to give you that choice. And there was just a question popping up like whether VanillaCloud / VanillaStack can be used as a hybrid solution, just rolling it out and then utilize additional platforms such as AWS, Azure, IBM, Google, Oracle. Answer is true. The answer is yes, because we can and we do not want to lock you in. The platform is open. As long as your application supports that, you are free to combine that with any kind of additional infrastructure you want to run. We plan to roll out additional data centers and additional partners over the next months. So we expect to have new EU data centers in Poland, Netherlands, Latvia over the next months. Plus, we additionally will have locations in the UK, in the United States, in Asia until Q4 of this year. So VanillaCloud is a virtual cloud. It gives you the choice. It gives you, and perhaps it forces you to understand whom you are working with and who you trust with your data. But on the other hand, you don't have that choice with other clouds. So VanillaCloud is already available. We started it in December of last year. We started a soft launch period. You can find more information about that on our website. The beta version is going to be available end of next week, and the general availability is end of March. But although we are currently in soft launch and beta phases, that won't prevent us from allowing you to have your productive workloads already on the platform, because the platform is a managed platform. So it's not like you are on your own. We do all the heavy lifting for you, and that makes us confident enough to give you the permission to run your production workloads on the platform already. Okay, let's talk about the interesting thing, the pricing. Before I jump onto that, I need to repeat one thing. VanillaCloud is always a managed service, and that means it is always a completely managed service. So infrastructure is managed for you. Machines, regardless of physical or virtual machines, are managed for you. The underlying Linux is managed for you. Your vanilla stack, which is basically rolled out with VanillaCloud, is managed for you. Each VanillaCloud instance, each cluster is, by the way, completely independent of another cluster. That is, by the way, another differentiator to many of the other platforms, because they provide you with shared Kubernetes instances. That's why they won't charge you for the master nodes, because the master nodes are not individually rolled out masters. Those are shared masters. And that affects performance and affects availability. With VanillaCloud, you always have your own cluster. Nobody is interfering with you. There's no performance hit to be expected. It is dedicated. The platform is always 100% open source. I mentioned that, so you have the kind of trust that you want to have. It is meant to be just rolled out and made available to you. It is always kept up to date. It is always kept secure. And as I already mentioned, it's a pay-per-use model. So what about prices then? Karsten, come on, get a bit more into detail. Glad you asked. To understand our pricing, you need to understand that it is basically a twofold pricing. The one thing is our management costs. So we cover setup, operations of infrastructure and vanilla stack. We bring in updates and security fixes. You have your support, you have your platform support, and that is basically made available at 25 cents per node and hour. The infrastructure costs are a bit more variable because it basically depends on what kind of infrastructure you are running. So it covers load balancers. It covers all of the virtual or physical machines. It covers all of the storage you want to use. It covers all of your data transfer, your IP addresses, if you want to have the additional domains and services. And again, that price is variable, and it starts as low as 5 € per node and hour. And what that basically means is that you can, and I show you an example pricing, you can basically run vanilla stack at quite comfortable prices. If you head over to the VanillaCloud homepage, we have two examples for you made available in the pricing section. One is a development cluster consisting of one master node. So it's not an HA version, so it's not high available, but good enough for development purposes and not so critical kind of workloads. We have 3 worker nodes, so it is actually quite resilient. There's a load balancer included. You have 100 GB of persistent storage in your cluster. You have 1 cluster IP address. You have our standard support, no setup fees. And that thing costs you, if you run it for a month, a sum of 876 euros. A production cluster, and that one is truly production grade. It has all the power, it has all the services you need, and it just blows things out of the water. It is consisting of 3 master nodes with 8 GB of RAM and a 160 GB SSD each, and of 3 worker nodes. Each of those workers have a 6-core Ryzen 5 3600 CPU. That's a truly powerful CPU. Each of the workers has 64 GB of RAM, so plenty of space for your workloads. And you have, with each of the workers, 2 times 512 GB of SSD storage at your disposal as well. So for your non-persistent data, for your transient data, there's a lot of room. Load balancers are included, and you have 512 GB of persistent storage at your disposal as well. Then you have also cluster IP addresses, support, and so on and so forth. We need to charge you with some setup fees. Sorry, it's a physical infrastructure, so it implies a lot of costs to set it up. And then basically you have a cluster consisting of 6 machines being ready for truly powerful work, completely managed end to end. It's not just like the hardware, it's everything, including service, including ticketing, including service desk, and so on and so forth, for less than 2 grand a month available. So that is quite a compelling pricing. And that is basically quite an interesting pricing, because it gives you that kind of trust you want to have to run your own workloads. If you have a operations team, let me put it that way, that operations team can focus on your internal stuff, can focus on running your traditional workloads. With VanillaCloud, we do all of the other lifting for you. And if that is not enough, we offer you additional services as well. So speaking of additional services, the first one I want to mention is Managed PaaS. And Managed PaaS builds upon the foundations of VanillaCloud. So you have your Vanilla stack, you have your KubeVirt, your Kubernetes, your Cloud Foundry, whatever you want to roll out with VanillaCloud. Plus, if you, for example, want to roll out and run databases or other sophisticated infrastructures, messaging queuing system, and so on and so forth, we do that for you. So again, a completely worry-free and sorrowless kind of experience. We manage all the infrastructure for you. You have all of your commercial support already included. And it ends up basically with, we run your stack. So just set it up, and we do all the magic for you. And we have Managed SaaS, which is Managed PaaS, so VanillaCloud with already managed infrastructure, plus databases and additional infrastructures that are not part of VanillaCloud, plus your workloads, your own workloads. So if you want to roll out, say, Jira, for example, we do that for you. We roll it out and we operate it. So we ensure it runs perfectly. If you want to roll out your self-written software and you don't have the time to take care of that, you don't have the time to do your operations for it because you are a development team, well, we get you covered. Managed SaaS is the second aspect of what you want to have there in place, because we run your workloads, we run your additional infrastructures, we run your platform. So just order it and then sit back, relax, and then again, feel at home, because we get you covered end to end. So that is basically what VanillaCloud is. It is a completely managed service. It is a 100% open source stack. It puts containers first and allows you to run virtual machines as well. It provides you with predictable pricing. It provides you, since it is vanilla stack in the cloud, with a huge community support. So even if you feel like you have specific questions towards specific products that you just, do not want to discuss with our support engineers, just try out the Kubernetes communities, try out your Cloud Foundry communities or the GitLab communities, or you name it. And very importantly, it imposes no vendor lock on you. So you don't get any kind of watered down versions of the product. You get the original products with all of their power and with everything they offer you. Compare that with other platforms and with other software stacks, and you will see that that is a true value. And VanillaCloud provides you with privacy and transparency. The whole stack is open source, and all of your data is kept inside your cluster. It is not stored externally. It is stored in your cluster. It is replicated in your cluster. So as long as you have your cluster running, your data is there. Even if most of the machines are crashing down, which won't happen because it's a managed environment, but bad things happen, everything is still there. And even if everything is shut down and then restarted, it's still there. You don't have to rely on external storage. You don't have to rely on black boxes because it is based on an Apache 2 licensed product. So privacy and transparency are at the core of VanillaCloud. And we are truly proud of that. You buy into a very, very innovative partner model because, again, we run it not on our own infrastructure, we run it with partners that offer you different flavors of infrastructures. So you can basically have the best of all of the worlds. Open source, transparency, and highly motivated and engaged partners from a local environment, if you like to have that. Period. If you want to learn more about VanillaCloud, head over to vanillacloud.io. And if you want to speak about VanillaCloud, well, use the hashtag VanillaCloud. There's one last question I want to answer, and I just read it out loud. Does Cloudical provide a cloud security assessment if a particular company or organization wants to use VanillaCloud? Yes, we do. Because again, the platform is completely open source. Everything is laid out. So our security teams are ready to provide such a cloud security assessment. If you want to bring in your own security experts, we happily welcome that. And we support you in basically digging into every aspect of the platform. So we get you covered. We don't have anything to hide, and we don't want to hide anything. So Vanilla Stack with VanillaCloud is, from our perspective, the best thing you can do to run Kubernetes. Secure, open, reliable, transparent, and privacy focused. And made in Europe, run in Europe, and made for Europe. Thanks for joining the webinar. Thanks for staying with me. Thanks for your questions. And if you, again, want to learn more, if you want to thrive the conversation, head over to vanillacloud.io or use the hashtag VanillaCloud. My name is Karsten Samaschke. Thanks for joining in. Bye.